When mentioning the title Lost in Space, it is not uncommon to receive mixed responses. Some may reminisce back on the B-movies and television of the 1960s, while others associate the name with critically panned cash-ins. However, the crew behind Lost in Space could not have foreseen the popularity the series would later gain. Debuting on September 15th of 1965, Lost in Space was aired over the Columbia Broadcasting System, later to be known as CBS. Director and producer Irwin Allen, best known for his work on disaster films such as The Towering Inferno and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, began development for a family show based on Johann David Weiss's The Swiss Family Robinson. In Allen's rendition of the story, the series' focus was set on a group of astronauts tasked with the colonization of a planet out near the star system Alpha Centauri. Allen's Robinson family was comprised of husband and wife, Professor John and Maureen Robinson, depicted by the late Guy Williams and June Lockhart, respectively. Alongside the couple were their children, Judy, played by Marta Kristen, Penny, Angela Cartwright, and Will Robinson, Billy Mooney. Alongside the Robinsons, Allen created the characters of Major Don West, Mark Goddard, and Dr. Zachary Smith, portrayed by the late Jonathan Harris. Even though the series was intended to be a family show from the beginning, it began to convert into a children's show in the later half of the first season. Even though the majority of the cast were adult characters, the adults were often designated as side characters, instead focusing on the adventures of Will and Dr. Smith. As many episodes focused primarily on Smith and Will, the tone became more comedic and farcical over the course of the series. Due to this development, some writers for the show began to use pen names in the credits in order to avoid criticism. Development on the series was initially hindered, as legal issues arose surrounding two other properties. The Space Family Robinson, published by Gold Key Comics, had debuted in 1962, detailing the adventures of the Robinson family, a group of scientists from Earth who eventually became stranded in space due to encountering a wormhole. Although both properties were renditions of the same base novel, neither party could claim copyright infringement based on the grounds that general concepts and ideas are not protected under copyright law. However, Gold Key was still adamant that the issue be resolved before the series made it to air. The legal issue between CBS and Gold Key was settled soon after the debut of the series, with the comics gaining the right to add the title of Lost in Space to the comic in order to increase sales numbers after the television series was released. Possibly unbeknownst to Allen, science fiction writer Ib Melchior had begun developing a pitch for a film in 1964 under the same title of Space Family Robinson. While it is unknown if Melchior attempted to pursue any legal action at the time, no recorded conflict aside from the Gold Key case has surfaced. Despite the absence of any legal action, during the life of the original series, this would not be the last time Melchior pursued compensation for supposed copyright infringement. During the life of the series, there was little to no plot continuity between each episode, often relying instead on a villain or monster of the week formula, in which the plot of each episode was often self-contained, never being referenced or occurring again. Despite this fact, the series premiered with a story arc that would span across the first 5 episodes. Before the initial plot arc, Allen had produced a pilot episode, often known under the episode title of No Place to Hide. Within the pilot, the Robinson family and Major West were the only occupants upon their ship, the Gemini 12, later to be renamed the Jupiter 2 in the official series. The characters of Dr. Smith and the robot were not present within the pilot episode and were added to the series after CBS had approved the production of more episodes. The story within the pilot closely follows that of the first few episodes of the series, often recycling some of the footage from the pilot and incorporating the clips into later episodes. The first official episode, The Reluctant Stowaway, began by introducing the audience to the Robinson family and Major West, along with foreign intelligence agent Dr. Zachary Smith, who is forced to stow away within the confines of the ship after attempting to sabotage the flight. The public is also given the first glance at the ship's environmental control robot, later to be known as the Robot or simply Robot. During the course of their journey, the Jupiter 2 soon encountered a meteor shower which sends the travelers off of their designated course, waking the family from suspended animation. The episode closes out as Professor Robinson attempts to fix the ship's external sensors, but becomes untethered and begins to drift away from the ship. The second episode would pick up directly after the first, with Maureen Robinson venturing outside of the ship to rescue her husband, before a large ship appears, abducting the Jupiter 2 and its inhabitants. While Professor Robinson and Major West explored the seemingly deserted ship, Will and Dr. Smith also wandered through the alien craft before making contact with an alien being. Will attempts to establish some form of communication with it, but before succeeding, Smith shoots the organism, causing the duo to be chased back to the ship by multiple other creatures. The Jupiter 2 and its crew manage to escape the confines of the larger alien vessel, heading off deeper into space and closing on the second episode. The third, fourth, and fifth episodes see the group finding a new planet capable of supporting human inhabitants after the Jupiter 2 crash lands on the planet as the result of a scuffle between Major West and Dr. Smith. The remaining episodes within the first season would go on to show the crew traveling across the planet in their all-terrain vehicle, the Chariot, to avoid the wrath of extreme temperature shifts, giant cyclopes, and freak weather changes before finally settling into a location, turning it into a temporary living environment. The second season saw the Robinson family and company return for a new round of adventures, this time presented in color. The second season begins with the Jupiter 2 family fleeing from the planet they inhabited during the course of the first season as it begins to crumble due to an unforeseen series of destructive earthquakes. The rest of the season followed the formula laid out by its predecessor, focusing on the weekly adventures of the Robinson family. However, this is when the formula would soon evolve into the child-friendly series that the show would often be panned for. Select episodes saw the trio encountering Dr. Smith's long-lost cousin, helping a space knight slay a dragon that he has been chasing for 40 years, and even seeing Will and Dr. Smith travel to Valhalla, meeting Thor after Smith is chosen by Thor's hammer to become the new wielder. Once again, the Robinsons are forced to flee from their new planet after they learn that a comet is going to collide with it in the near future. Unlike the first two, this season was planned to focus more on adventure and space exploration. The Jupiter 2 was able to travel between planets rather than being confined to a stationary location during the bulk of the series. Despite the change in traveling methods, the show still primarily stuck to its monster or villain of the week formula, seeing the crew members discover a planet of cavemen and a celestial department store, along with fighting new antagonists, such as an evil Professor Robinson from a parallel dimension, and Kronos, an alien who controls the flow of time. Unfortunately, the adventures of the Robinson family would soon come to an end after the episode Junkyard in Space aired on March 6, 1968. This concluding episode left the series on a rather dire note, opening with the Jupiter 2 catching fire, forcing the crew to land on a nearby planet. The planet is revealed to be a gigantic intergalactic junkyard, run by a seemingly robotic junkman. To make matters worse, the entirety of the ship's food becomes contaminated with rust blight. Because of this, Smith barters with the Junkman, trading parts from the robot in exchange for food. After tiring of his trade deal, however, the Junkman expresses his desire to Smith of the possession of the Jupiter 2. With the assistance of his new robotic extremities, the Junkman and Smith steal the ship, leaving the Robinsons stranded behind on the planet. During the production of Junkyard in Space, both the cast and crew were under the impression that the series had already been renewed for a fourth season, with Irwin Allen claiming to have already ordered scripts to be written for the new season. The knowledge of the series Cancellation did not reach the production crew and cast until CBS released a list of series that were renewed for the 1968 and 69 season in Variety magazine. No solid evidence or reasoning has been given as to exactly why the show had been canceled, often citing up to 4 or 5 different reasons for cancellation. The documentary Lost in Space Forever claims that the rise in production costs and declining ratings among viewers were the primary reason for cancellation. However, sources such as Billy Mooney claim that budget cuts were a primary factor in cancellation, as Allen began to claim that the series would not be able to continue with a cut budget, with one account recalling an incident where Allen stormed out of a meeting after being informed of further budget cuts. The camp elements of Lost in Space are often what most fans and critics remember best about the series, with the comedic Dr. Smith and Will Robinson being the most often recognized characters to the public. Following the cancellation of the show, in 1973, an animated pilot episode from Hanna-Barbera Studios of Flintstones and Scooby-Doo fame was created in hopes of reviving the series as a children's cartoon. The pilot only aired once as part of the American Broadcasting Channel's block, aptly named the ABC Saturday Superstar Movie, alongside other tentative series pilot episodes based on established characters such as Yogi Bear. It wouldn't be until a little more than 2 decades later when the name of Lost in Space would appear again, this time as a big-budget movie released in America on April 3, 1998, seeing Gary Oldman portray Dr. Smith and William Hurt as Professor Robinson. The movie is infamous among fans for changing several aspects of the original story, with the movie now holding a darker, more serious tone as opposed to the television series' camp and lightheartedness. Due to mixed reception, a sequel that was planned for the movie never made it into production. The rights to the movie were originally possessed by Prelude Pictures Incorporated, as the Allen estate sold the license after his passing. During the period of IP possession by Prelude, Ib Melchior resurfaced, to put forward the notion again that Lost in Space was based off of his ideas, even though Allen would not admit to doing so. In order to quell any further complaints from Melchior, Prelude created a release agreement. The agreement states, quote, "If the picture gets made in association with Prelude granted to Melchior the right to receive $75,000 as a production bonus payable out of the budget of the picture and 2% of Prelude's gross receipts, if any, from the picture." Unquote. The agreement between the two parties further elaborated on the idea as it continued on to state that Melchior would be credited as special advisor to Mark Koch in the credit sequence at the end of the film. Other benefits included that of Melchior, if available, to be hired during the course of the film's production, granting him a salary of $1,500 per week for at least 10 weeks. 2 months later, Prelude began to negotiate with New Line Productions Incorporated over purchasing the property rights for New Line to produce a feature-length motion picture based on the Lost in Space property. The agreement between New Line and Prelude included mention of the negotiation with Melchior, making sure that the deal would still be held up by New Line over the course and after production. New Line did pay Melchior his settlement of $90,000, claiming that $75,000 was a production bonus and the remaining $15,000 were for his services as advisor over parts of the production. Despite Melchior being paid, he still pursued further legal action against New Line, claiming a breach of contract due to Melchior not receiving his entitled 2% of the gross receipts. When taken to court over the issue, it was quickly settled that Melchior was to receive his compensation over the appeal. 6 years later, in 2004, a new pilot was in development for a series called The Robinsons, Lost in Space. The pilot was directed by John Woo, under commission for the Warner Brothers television network. However, the pilot was never fully developed into a series. The only remnants of the pilot's existence remain on YouTube, uploaded to the channel Toolman87, and only available in a low 360p resolution. A decade of silence passed by before it was announced in October of 2014 that the television and movie streaming service Netflix would be developing a new Lost in Space series, acting as a reboot, set to debut on the platform April 13th of 2018. The reboot would follow the basic premise of the original series, keeping the same base characters. Despite the presence of familiar characters, however, the new series takes a more serious tone, such as that of the 1998 film. Alongside the new tone, other aspects have been changed as well, such as that of Dr. Smith being portrayed by actress Parker Posey, and the Robinsons robot being of alien origin. While the future of the Lost in Space franchise seems stable for now, fans wait with bated breath in anticipation of what is in store. While the name Lost in Space can now be associated with multiple incarnations, to many fans, old and new, it means a simpler time. A time occupied by a show that wasn't afraid to embrace the camp, and one that sought to instill a sense of wonderment through its storytelling and visuals.